My relationship with games this year has been a strange one. I felt a very strong weight of exhaustion with them, particularly when it came to AAA titles, and so I've become extremely picky with what ones I play. As time went on, it seemed like I was seeing the same kinds of games over and over again, but with a different skin, which is sometimes still a good time, but this year I craved more. As such, my number of finished games for 2021 took a sharp decline in comparison to previous years. There were a lot of games that I didn't have the chance to finish or even start at all, but that's not to say that there weren't any good games released this year. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And if that wasn't the case, then this video wouldn't exist. The ones that have made this list have meant something to me in one way or another, and I feel like I played them precisely at the right time in my life. Some are very difficult to talk about without spoiling the joy of discovery about certain aspects in these games, and I have omitted a fair bit to keep these recommendations as spoiler-free as possible. So in no specific order, here are my favourite games from this year. Mundaun is one of 2 folk horror games to make this list. The story follows the protagonist Kurdin as he arrives in this secluded village in the Alps after receiving news of his grandfather's death. Mundaun is a place so high up in the mountains you might think it was suspended in the fog. This element of isolation that would normally translate into peacefulness is instead warped into a dark and oppressive scene. Its setting goes deeper, however, as the voice acting is in Romansh, a language that is specific to this region. The significance of its setting is impressive, shifting the game into an almost postcard status, as its accuracies truly elevate it into a one-of-a-kind experience of a one-of-a-kind place. Mundaun's most striking feature lies in its art style, which was crafted with hand-penciled drawings from the many sketchbooks of Michel Ziegler. The papery canvases of objects have lead scratched into them, with the harshness and direction of strokes used to convey texture. Any possible flatness is elevated by the powerful lighting and subtle movement in the environment. There's a suffocating stillness shrouded in undeniable beauty, one that is often twisted into breathtaking surrealism, in part due to a typically 2D medium being imposed onto a 3D environment. There's also a great video I recommend watching on the making of Mundaun. It made me appreciate the in-game journal and map drawings a lot more. Seeing them being hand-drawn behind the scenes and transported into the virtual space gives a new level of authenticity to it. The game is more of a looming dread kind of horror, rather than a startling one. There were maybe 2 jump scares that I could count throughout my entire 7-hour experience. There's also a mechanic I really like, which is literally just being able to make a cup of coffee. It serves as a very therapeutic moment in a horror game, and also as a stat bonus. Another detail I enjoyed were the slow zooms into pictures and mirrors, slowly morphing through sight and sound into an eerie scene. Overall, Mundaun feels like a very mellow horror, which works to its strengths in terms of atmosphere and presentation. I can't recommend it enough. I immediately picked up Unpacking when I saw it on Game Pass. I followed it for a while before release and thought that it would just be a calming game purely based on its organisational puzzles. What I didn't realise was that there would be such a strong reflection on our relationship with objects, as the story is mainly told through the placement and existence of certain items. The game covers 8 house moves from childhood to adulthood. Some possessions are left behind, but others will follow no matter what stage of life the character is at. The meaning of items changes over time too. There's one stage where there's no room for your diploma to be hung up in your partner's home that you're moving into, which seems to be pretty indicative of the kind of relationship that was had. And it was in these instances that you notice how powerful the storytelling is through such a simple mechanic. One of my favourite things outside of playing was watching other people's playthroughs. It's eye-opening to see how differently we all store certain objects, and where we think things belong. Unpacking made me understand how much of ourselves are in our possessions, and how the smallest things can often follow us throughout our entire lives, and almost feel like a part of us. This game is surprisingly one of the most introspectively thought-provoking titles I've played. I only found out about SPOOKWARE a few days before release, and the satisfaction of randomly picking something up and having it be one of the best things you've played that year is second to none. To describe the game very briefly, it's kinda like a Paper Mario and WarioWare mashup in a Halloween-themed package. I found the structure of the game to be pretty compelling. Each chapter had a different central theme which affects the mechanics. One chapter will have you finding members for a school band, where the microgames will be mainly rhythm-based. And another chapter will involve you running your own restaurant in a Diner Dash manner, but with food-related microgames. SPOOKWARE is filled to the brim with so much charm and wit. The dialogue was super enjoyable to read, and the interactions between the characters are incredibly entertaining. The protagonists are as equally lovable as their wacky adventures. It had a consistently cutesy horror theme that had me smiling the entire game. It also has one of the most memorable soundtracks of this year for me. Victor Krauss did a fantastic job, and I often find myself listening to the songs on repeat. Stylistically, it's the kind of game that, if I were to make a game, I would have wanted it to look like this. Currently, there's one episode that's out which contains 3 chapters. There will be another 3 episodes released in the future, and I absolutely cannot wait to play them. I'm not even kidding when I say that the full game has the potential to be one of my all-time favourites. Even just writing about it makes me want to go back and play the episode all over again. Everhood's battle system uses a similar mechanic to Guitar Hero, but instead of hitting the notes, you instead need to dodge them. There's a cast of quirky characters and fun dialogue that you'd expect from games like Undertale and Earthbound, as well as a heavy element of surrealism, one that plays deeply into its central themes all through a psychedelic RPG lens. The game will occasionally dissolve into a trippy mess, and I mean that in the best way possible. The soundtrack is phenomenal, and quite frankly indescribable at times, something which matches the bonkers nature of the game. I still find it hard to believe a game like this exists, and I'd really recommend this to people who want to try something wildly different. It's rare a game sweeps me off my feet in the way that Everhood did. From the music to art style and clever use of the central gameplay mechanic, it's a spectacle to behold. There was no shortage of surprising moments in my 5-hour playthrough, which made playing Everhood so refreshing and exciting. I have no doubt that I'll be thinking about my experience with it for a long time. There's a whole lot of lore to get invested in, and I can say that jumping into New Game Plus was very tempting to start immediately, in order to delve more into the story and more hidden parts of the world. A lot of this game is better left unsaid and unshown, but unfortunately this includes a lot of the stuff that convinced me to put it in this list, especially late game and story related aspects. If what I've said so far seems to be interesting to you, I can only ask that you take the plunge and give this game a chance. Much like Everhood, Body Simulator 1984 is better experienced knowing as little as possible, so I'll keep this short. The game is about a program that is made to be a virtual buddy. You'll name your buddy, tell it your favourite colour, and share your birthday date. It'll create little games for you to play together like rock, paper, scissors or hangman, before then shifting into a text-based adventure and 2D RPG, in fear that you'll get bored and quit. I was super impressed by the text-based section in particular, probably because I never realised how immersive these kinds of games can be. It's really cool typing in commands out of curiosity, not expecting them to work, but then being surprised when it actually does. I also didn't expect it to be as scary as it was, and the sinister turn that this game takes makes some sections actually quite disturbing. The way that collectibles in the game work is fun as well, creating batch files in your documents for you to open up and read. If you try and open up a file that you haven't unlocked yet, it'll just be invalid data. All in all, I seriously enjoyed this game. and there's even a credit song so good it's worth playing the entire thing for. I've personally avoided card games in the past because I didn't think I'd be into them, but Inscryption completely changed my mind. I was initially drawn in by the horror aspect and the delightfully crunchy visuals. I think what put me off about card games in the first place was an initial hurdle of complexity when it came to learning all the rules, but I found Inscryption to be very welcoming in this regard. That's not to say it wasn't a challenging experience. It was actually still pretty difficult for me throughout. It was just the right amount of difficulty to get me to experiment with different strategies, while also allowing me to learn the rules and figure out the best choices when it came to deck building. There are fairly frequent intervals where you spend time away from the card table, which I can't get into too much for spoiler reasons, but just as an example for the beginning of the game, this will mainly involve looking around the room and solving small puzzles in order to get some more items you can use during the card battle phase. The sound design in this game really stands out too, which normally isn't something that I notice much. I have certain sound effects practically etched into my mind ever since playing, especially the clinking sound of points hitting the scales. Inscryption is the game I found most addictive in this list. It was very hard for me to pull myself away from the screen at times, and I think the same goes for a lot of other people who played this game too. Another genre I've given a chance this year is arena shooters, and Boomerang X did not disappoint. Its fast-paced combat means you have to keep moving. One hit means one shield lost, and while you can replenish your defenses from the shield markers on the map, they are limited. Each wave will require you to defeat a certain number of enemies marked with a yellow icon, and any other kills are optional, but most of the time necessary to not get overwhelmed. Enemy variation is perfect for the length of this game, which is on the shorter side at about 2.5 hours for one playthrough. Some will need you to defeat smaller enemy types first to take down a shield, and others will only be able to be defeated if you hit the weak point on their back. As you move through the game, you will unlock more abilities, allowing you to chain together powerful moves that make quick work of swarms of enemies, provided you fulfill the requirements such as double kills. The arenas are colourful and detailed, but not to the point of distracting you from or obscuring enemies. They will change in aesthetic, verticality, and size, which combined with the outstanding fluidity of combat, turns out to be an unsurprisingly satisfying gameplay package. I think what Boomerang X does very well is making even the least experienced players feel like they're doing something cool and skillful. It does a good job of easing you into the mechanics and moveset while ramping up the difficulty so you're forced to refine your skills by the end of the game. There's also an adequate amount of challenge in the form of achievements that I'd personally like to go back and complete, so there's definitely some replayability there. But even with just my initial playthrough, I feel very content with what the game had to offer. Before I picked up Psychonauts 2, I desperately missed playing 3D platformers. I found the ones I've tried to play in recent years were pretty hit or miss, so my hopes weren't very high before I started playing. Immediately I was greeted with an eccentric, vibrant world overflowing with remarkable characters, emphasised by amazing voice acting that complements the dialogue and interactions perfectly. The level design was fantastic, and it begged to be explored from corner to corner. The movement felt buttery smooth, and along with the intricate and energetic environments, it highlighted how polished this game is. I don't know how long I spent just rolling around the hub area and seeing what details I could pick up on. There were levels where I'd be stunned by the explosion of colour and artistry before my eyes, and if the distinct visuals for each mindscape weren't enough, there were unique mechanics to go with them too. From a pinball segment to a level that had you competing in a cooking show, the Psychonauts 2 experience remains inventive and downright fun. Jack Black's in it as well, so I think that's a pretty strong selling point in itself. I personally didn't play the first game, which thankfully wasn't a problem with the comprehensive recap at the beginning of the game. And while I may have unknowingly missed some references to the first title, it never dampened my experience in any way. Playing this game was almost inspiring to me as a creator, as I saw how much imagination and heart went into it. Psychonauts 2 is an astounding platformer, and one I don't think will be beat for a long while. Sable is the first open world game that I've really clicked with since Death Stranding. Its focus on player freedom and its Mobius-esque art style made for the most therapeutic, explorative games I've played. Had it come out before my Tranquility of Traversal video, it would have definitely been a prime example. Every random choice I made to go off to a structure or mountain in the distance paid off in some way, and I was rarely met with areas locked off due to not having enough progression. There are plenty of secrets to find in the deserts of Mundaun, and any empty space is put to good use as you cruise across the dunes on your bike Simoon, which can be customized to have the speed, handling, and looks that you desire. The story follows Sable as she departs on her gliding, a rite of passage that will end with her choosing what mask she will wear as she transitions into adulthood. As you collect different types of badges, you will complete a number of quests such as beetle catching, scrap collecting, and even perhaps a game of hide and seek. Collecting 3 badges of a certain type means that you will be able to have a mask crafted, adding another option for when you inevitably choose one at the end of your gliding. Coupled with a soundtrack composed by Japanese breakfast's Michelle Zorner, exploring the ruins of spaceships and ancient structures feels otherworldly, and makes Sable a worthy addition to my list of top games for this year. If you're interested in hearing me talk more about the game, I do have a dedicated video which I'll put a link in the description for. I've always been one to appreciate the campy aspects of Resident Evil games, and Village had no shortage of that. The game follows the story of Ethan Winters, who is the returning protagonist from Resident Evil 7. Instead of the Louisiana swamps, however, the latest title is set in an isolated village somewhere in Romania, and the faithfulness to creating believable southeastern European homes meant a lot to me as someone who's intimately familiar with that setting. It's my favourite Resident Evil title partly because of this. In terms of narrative and pacing, this is the most invested I've been with any Resident Evil game. I remember during my first week I had already done 3 or 4 playthroughs, my personal record for number of replays of any game during that kind of time frame. I think this is down to Village being a very contained experience, which is something I much prefer these days, and is quite noticeable given this list of games I've chosen, none of which are over the 15-hour mark for one playthrough. That being said, Capcom have announced there will be DLC released for this game, but it's too early to tell how much playable content that will be, or even if it's just cosmetic. I would love to see a story expansion since I really connected with the world and its characters, so long as it matches the quality of the campaign. The main bosses are pronounced likeable characters who are already some of the most memorable enemies in the series. The over-dramatized nature of them, along with the seemingly fantastical creatures you'll come across, makes this installment stand out from the rest. But everything is still grounded in the series' universe, at times with great payoff. There was a level near the end which was my only complaint as I felt it messed with the otherwise smooth pacing, but apart from that, there wasn't a second that went by where I wasn't having the time of my life on this roller coaster of a game. Like Sable, I also have a video specifically on Resident Evil Village, so feel free to give that a watch for more folk goodness. Overall, this year has been stellar for the indie scene. There's been some fantastic art styles and directions that even got me to try genres I never thought I'd be into. Each title in this list was there for me when I needed it most. Whether I wanted a challenge or something cozy, there was always a game ready to fulfill my needs. I wish I had the time to play games like Cruelty Squad, Tormented Souls, It Takes Two, and so much more. And I'm going to try my best next year to play even more games, as there's plenty to look forward to. I'd like to take a moment to thank everybody for watching my videos this year. If they've been a source of comfort or entertainment for you, that really means a lot to me. And reading all of your comments has at a lot of times been the driving force for me continuing to create content. I'd also like to especially thank my patrons, as without them, I wouldn't have been able to get the equipment and hardware needed to make videos, and even play certain titles in the first place. Finally, I want to thank my friends for always being there for me, and helping me out with things like script proofreading and discussing ideas for videos. I would have probably lost my mind by now if it weren't for them. This year I've started streaming on Twitch, doing written pieces for gaming journals like Lock On, and somehow managed to reach 50,000 subscribers. None of this would have been possible if I hadn't received the amount of support and kindness that you've all given me. So thank you, everybody. To end this video, I want to show a little reel of upcoming games I've got my eyes on. There's a bunch of great stuff I'm really excited for, and I can't wait to keep talking about games in the new year. Thank you everyone once again, and I hope you have a very happy new year.